Welcome to Tomorrow Unveiled.
It's great to be back.
So I really want to set the scene for everyone listening. It's late January 2026. And if you take a second to look around, check the headlines, look at your work chats, or even just sort of gauge the vibe at the grocery store, the world feels tight.
Right.
It feels stretched.
It really does. Tense. There's this high-frequency tension in the air.
But it's not panic. I wouldn't call it panic. Not like 2020. This is something else. It's this weird, almost vibrating energy.
I know exactly what you mean.
And that specific feeling is actually the jumping off point for this huge stack of research we're getting into today. Our research team has pinpointed this exact moment right now, early 2026, as the J-curve moment.
The J-curve. Now, that's a term you usually hear in like private equity or talking about startups, but the team is absolutely right. It fits the macro environment perfectly.
So for anyone who maybe skipped that class in college, what are we talking about here?
Well, the J-curve just describes a path where things get a lot worse, or at least a lot messier, before they get exponentially better.
It's the dip.
It is the dip. It's the valley of death, as they say in Silicon Valley. It's that messy, expensive, really uncomfortable period where you've deployed a massive amount of capital.
And not just financial capital.
Oh, no. All of it. Political will, emotional energy, everything. You've poured all of that into a totally new way of doing things. But, and this is the key part, the returns haven't hit yet.
You're bleeding cash to build the factory, but the factory isn't making any cars.
Exactly. And that's where we are. We are deep in that valley right now.
That context is just so critical because it explains the absolute paradox that our team found in the labor market data this week. This was the first thing that it jumped right off the page at me.
It makes no sense at first glance.
None. We're looking at a low-fire environment. On the surface, it looks stagnant. But then you talk to anyone in HR or anyone trying to build a team, and they are, frankly, freaking out.
Because underneath that calm-looking surface, there's a violent riptide. It's a fundamental, structural restructuring of the global workforce, and it's happening in real time.
The research team flagged a transcript from Davos, which just wrapped up, and Kristalina Georgieva from the IMF used a very specific, very heavy word. She called AI a tsunami hitting the labor market. She said 40% of global jobs are exposed.
And that number gets even scarier when you zoom in. It jumps to 60% when you just look at advanced economies. The US, the UK, places like that.
60%, that's just staggering.
Yeah.
It means more than half the people listening to Tomorrow Unveiled right now could see their jobs fundamentally altered.
For sure.
But here's the hook. This is what we have to unravel. If a tsunami is bearing down on us, why are companies screaming from the rooftops that they can't find talent?
It's the paradox of scarcity and abundance happening at the exact same time.
It's a multi-trillion-dollar question.
Yeah, it really is.
And answering it is our mission for this installment of Tomorrow Unveiled. We're calling this one Future-Proofed. And we're not just looking at the tech itself, we're looking at the whole regime shift.
The economic, the educational, the geopolitical.
We're going to talk about the hollow middle of the workforce, which is it's a terrifying concept we need to explore. We're also going to look at something the research calls metacognitive laziness in our education system.
Which is a trap, I think. I think we're all at risk of falling into that one.
Absolutely. And then we're going to break down the rise of what they're calling the Agentic era. This is the huge shift from software that just talks to you to software that actually acts for you.
The stakes are incredibly high.
They are. And look, we know there's a lot of anxiety out there. You see the layoffs in the news. The change feels so rapid, it's relentless. But our goal here is to pivot to the data. We want to give you the insights to navigate this J-curve without crashing.
Let's do it.
So let's get into it. Section 1, the bifurcated workforce.
Or, as I've been thinking of it, a tale of two economies.
Our research team pulled some really fascinating data, matching up some public info from places like the Indeed Hiring Lab with their own internal findings. And they're calling this a silent recession for one group.
And an absolute gold rush for the other.
Let's just look at the raw numbers. Overall job postings, January 2026. What are they doing?
Flat. Painfully flat. We are hovering at about 6% above pre-pandemic levels. That's it. So if you're out there waiting for that frantic hiring spree from 2021 or 22 to come back...
Stop waiting.
Yeah, stop waiting. It's gone.
But if you apply a filter to that same pool of job postings, if you search for terms like artificial intelligence, generative AI, agentic workflows...
The line on the graph just goes vertical. It's a surge of over 130%.
That's not a gap. That's a chasm.
It really is. And it explains the cognitive dissonance people are feeling out there. If you're a traditional worker, you've got a traditional skill set, the economy feels totally locked up.
Right. Houses aren't selling. You send out resumes. Nobody calls back. It feels like a recession.
But if you exist inside that AI ecosystem,
It's a boom town. I was trying to think of an analogy, and it's like the housing market. Imagine a city where half the neighborhoods are just crumbling, boards on the windows, for sale signs rotting on the lawns.
yeah,
But then, just 3 blocks away, in the AI district, houses are going for double the asking price. All cash. Insane bidding wars. It entirely depends on which neighborhood your resume lives in.
that is a perfect analogy. And this brings us right to this idea of the hollow middle. This is maybe the most dangerous place to be in 2026.
For so long, we talked about automation coming for the factory floor. The robots were going to take the blue-collar jobs. That was the narrative for 20 years.
And to be fair, they did take a lot of them.
Yeah.
But this 2026 shift it's different. Automation has moved up the food chain. It's not in the factory anymore. It's hunting the white-collar suburbs.
Finance, legal services, middle management,
Cool.
innovators.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The people whose job, if you really boil it down, is to take an email from their boss,
Yeah.
put the information into a spreadsheet, and then email that spreadsheet to the team,
The friction removers.
the friction removers. The problem is, Agentic AI removes friction faster, cheaper, and more reliably than a human middle manager. The research points to a prediction that 20% of organizations, that's 1 in 5, will use AI to eliminate more than half of their middle management positions
This year.
this year.
Wow. That's a bloodbath for the corporate ladder.
It completely changes the shape of a company. Think about it. The corporate structure has always been a pyramid, right?
Sure, broad base at the bottom, small peak at the top.
You have a broad base of execution, a middle layer of management to oversee that execution,
Yeah.
and then that small peak of strategy. AI just flattens the pyramid. It allows the strategists at the top to connect directly with the execution layer.
Or just automates the execution layer entirely.
The middle just, well, it evaporates.
But for those who stay, or I guess for those who adapt, the rewards are getting kind of absurd. We have to talk about the AI premium.
This is the other side of the coin, the new collar divide. The data from our research team is incredibly stark here.
What does it say?
It says workers with advanced AI skills.
Hmm.
And we need to define that in a second because it's not just about coding. They are commanding a 56% wage premium over their peers.
In the exact same role.
In the exact same role.
56%. Okay, let's make that real. I'm a marketing manager. I make, say, $100,000 a year.
Okay.
My colleague sitting at the next desk, also a marketing manager, but she knows how to build and run these agentic workflows. Is she really making $156,000?
In theory, yes.
Mm.
Because she's not just one worker anymore. She's a worker plus a whole fleet of digital agents. Her productivity isn't 10% higher, it's 10 times higher.
And this is the key point I saw in the report. This applies everywhere. HR, legal, marketing. It's not just for the IP department anymore.
Not at all.
But you've used that term a few times. Agentic AI. We should probably clarify that because it feels like the big buzzword of 2026. How is this different from the chatbot I was playing with back in 2023?
Oh, it's a huge difference, a world of difference. The AI of 2023, the early versions of ChatGPT, Claude, those were tools you talked to.
A conversationalist.
Exactly. You asked a question, it gave you an answer. It could write, it could summarize. Agentic AI acts. It reasons, it plans, it executes multi-step tasks.
So I'm not saying write me an email to a vendor.
No, you're saying manage this entire vendor relationship. You said, look, we need to renegotiate our contract with vendor X. Here's our budget. Here's their last offer. I want you to go contact them, negotiate for better pricing, draft the new contract based on our legal templates, and then schedule a signing meeting for next Tuesday.
And the software just goes and does all that.
It goes and does it. It sends the emails, it reads their replies, it adjusts its strategy based on their response, it checks your calendar, it does the whole thing.
It's a coworker.
It's an indefatigable, hyper-fast, incredibly cheap coworker. And if you know how to manage that coworker, your value just skyrockets. If you don't,
You're the one competing with it for your job.
precisely.
This whole shift is really messing with our heads, though. The research has this whole section on the psychology of the workforce. They call it the vibe shift.
Laughing slightly. The vibe shift. Yeah, do you remember the Great Resignation?
Oh, vividly. 2021, everyone was quitting, moving to a farm, starting a podcast.
Guilty. But that energy is completely dead. In 2025, everybody wanted to move. Now, in 2026, the data shows 93% of workers want to stay put.
93%.
They're calling it the Great Stay.
Why, though? Is it a sudden burst of corporate loyalty?
It's fear. Or, to be more charitable, let's call it risk management. People see that tsunami that Georgieva talked about. They see the headlines about layoffs in tech. They see the hollow middle eroding under their feet.
So they're hunkering down?
Exactly. They're prioritizing stability over novelty. They just want to keep their job, keep the benefits, and try to survive this transition. If the weather forecast looks bad, you don't take the boat out for a spin.
That makes a lot of sense. But it's not all doom and gloom. We can't paint this picture in just black and white. The report does point out an absolute explosion in these new-collar roles. And kind of surprisingly, a lot of them are physical.
This is the silicon and steel part of the J-curve we were talking about.
Yeah.
We tend to forget that AI isn't some magic dust in the cloud. It lives in physical data centers.
Which need massive amounts of electricity and cooling and physical security.
The stat here is just wild. Over 600,000 new jobs have been created in data centers since 2022.
And these are not all programmers.
Not at all. These are electricians, HVAC technicians, construction workers, security guards. You simply cannot build the digital future without a whole lot of physical labor.
It's return to the tangible, and it's happening globally. I really love this case study from the World Economic Forum about the agripreneurs in Africa.
This is one of the most hopeful signals in the entire research stack, I think. Africa has the youngest population in the world, a massive demographic dividend.
Right. And for a long time, the big worry was, where are all these young people going to work? The factory jobs are gone.
But they're not waiting around for factories to be built. They're leapfrogging that whole stage.
How so?
They're using AI and digital platforms to completely revolutionize agriculture. They're developing what's called blue foods, things like aquaculture. They're using satellite data and AI models on a cheap smartphone to optimize crop yields in ways that were science fiction 5 years ago.
So they basically skipped the Industrial Revolution phase.
And went straight to the AI agrarian phase.
Wow.
And in some sectors, yes.
Yeah.
And because they don't have all that legacy infrastructure of the hollow middle to dismantle, they don't have millions of middle managers pushing paper around, they might actually adapt to this agentic era faster than the West in some surprising ways.
That's a fascinating thought, the late mover advantage. But before we get too optimistic, we have to look at how we're preparing the next generation for all this. Because the data on education, well, it's keeping me up at night.
Yeah, this is the part of the report that parents really need to listen to very, very carefully.
Let's move to section 2, the education trap. We all thought AI in schools was going to be the great equalizer, right?
A personal tutor for every child.
Yeah.
Aristotle on an iPad for everyone.
And we are seeing glimpses of that. But the OECD just dropped a bombshell report, their Digital Education Outlook 2026, and it suggests there might be a major backfire happening.
It is a classic be careful what you wish for scenario.
So walk us through the big aha moment from their field experiment. They took a bunch of math students, divided them into groups.
Right. So you have Group A. They get to use a sophisticated AI tool to help them solve complex problems.
Yeah.
Then you have Group B, who just use traditional methods, pen, paper, and their own brain. And initially, the results were exactly what you'd expect. The students using the AI, Group A, they performed 48% better on the task. They got the right answers. They moved faster. It looked like a huge success.
Success! Deploy the tablets. Ship it.
Not so fast. The twist came when they took the AI away for the final exam.
And what happened?
The students who had been using the AI, the ones who had been outperforming everyone, they performed 17% worse than the students who never touched the AI at all.
Wait, stop. 17% worse than the kids who had zero help.
Correct.
So using the AI didn't just fail to teach them the material, it actively impaired their ability to learn it.
It made them dependent. This is the phenomenon the researchers are calling metacognitive laziness.
That sounds like a condition I might have on a Sunday morning. But what is actually happening in the brain here, scientifically?
So metacognition is basically thinking about thinking. It's that struggle your brain goes through when you don't immediately know the answer. That friction, that productive struggle, that's actually where the learning happens.
Where the neural pathways get built.
Exactly. It happens during the struggle, not when you get the solution. It's the gym analogy.
Right.
If you go to the gym and you have a robotic exoskeleton that lifts all the weights for you, sure, the weights go up and down, the task is completed, but do your muscles grow?
No, they atrophy.
They atrophy. And that is the terror here. We might be raising a generation of kids with atrophied critical thinking muscles because they have an answer engine in their pocket 24/7.
We're giving them the answer, but they're not understanding the process.
That's it. It's the difference between using AI as a driver that does the work for you versus using it as a GPS that guides you while you still have to do the driving. One focuses on task performance, the other on building real competence.
So how do we fix this? Because you can't ban AI. It's like banning calculators. The kids will just find a way to use it.
You can't ban it. It's a fool's errand. You have to change how the tools are designed. And this is where we get to the idea of the Agentic University and this new wave of EdTech.
The research mentioned a partnership, I think, between Google and Khan Academy as a sort of prototype for this.
Yes, and it's built on this crucial distinction between a writing generator and a writing coach.
And the distinction is everything.
It's everything. A writing generator takes your prompt, write me an essay about the Civil War, and it gives you a finished essay. The friction is zero. The learning is also zero.
But a writing coach?
A writing coach acts more like Socrates. You say, I want to write about the Civil War,
Yeah.
and it asks you, okay, great, what's your core thesis?
And if you give it a weak answer, like, oh, it was a big war.
It pushes back. It says, that's a bit broad. Can you be more specific? What evidence are you going to use to support that point? That quote doesn't seem to prove what you think it proves. Can you find a better one?
So it forces the student to do the heavy lifting.
It uses AI to create productive friction, not to remove it.
Friction as a feature. That is such a counterintuitive design principle for the tech world.
It's counterintuitive for tech, but it's essential for the human brain.
So while K through 12 is struggling with this, higher education is having its own massive crisis. The research talks about a flight to utility.
And this connects right back to those new collar jobs we were discussing. We are seeing a huge surge in vocational training and community college enrollment,
How big a surge?
up 11.7% year over year, which is a massive jump in education trends.
And what does that signal?
It signals a fundamental shift in what students and their parents perceive as valuable. They're looking at the world and realizing that a generic mid-tier 4-year liberal arts degree might just be a very expensive ticket to landing in that hollow middle.
Right. If an AI can write a mediocre history paper in 5 seconds, maybe I shouldn't spend $100,000 learning how to write mediocre history papers over 4 years.
It's a harsh way to put it, but the market is ruthless. Students are looking for what the report calls durable competence. They want skills that combine hands-on utility things AI can't do in the physical world with a high level of digital literacy.
They want to be the person who fixes the robot or the person who manages the data center.
Not the person filling out spreadsheets in a cubicle that the robot just made redundant.
Exactly. This is a perfect point to pause for a moment. We've looked at the workforce, we've looked at education, but all of this is happening inside a much bigger container, right? The geopolitical struggle for dominance.
The silicon and steel of the 21st century. The game board is changing fast.
Before we dive into the splinternet and the global battle for compute, let's take a quick breath. If you're finding this look at the 2026 landscape insightful, please take a moment to like this video, subscribe to Tomorrow Unveiled, and maybe consider hitting that new hype button to help us reach more viewers. And of course, be sure to turn on notifications so you never miss an update on the future.
And we really do want this to be a two-way street. Whether you're on YouTube or your favorite podcast app, leave a comment and let us know what you think. Do you use AI as a crutch or coach in your own work? Be honest, we read all the comments.
Okay, so let's unpack Section 3, the geopolitics of silicon and steel.
The first thing to understand is that the days of a single global internet are, for all practical purposes, over. We have entered the era of the splinternet.
And the research identifies 3 really distinct blocks that have emerged. You've got the US, the EU, and Asia, and they are taking radically different approaches to this AI moment.
Let's start with the U.S. It's January 2026. The new administration is fully in gear. And their approach can pretty much be summarized in 3 words. Build, baby, build.
It's all about deregulation and energy dominance.
The entire U.S. policy is focused on one thing: winning the compute war at all costs. To run these massive agentic AI models, you need 2 things: chips and electricity. And we were talking about energy consumption on the scale of small nations.
The research mentioned this growing tension between climate dogma and AI's insatiable hunger for energy. It really felt like something had to give.
It did. And in the U.S., the strategic priority has won out. The administration is prioritizing energy production, nuclear, natural gas, even restarting dormant plants. all to power these new data centers.
The strategic logic being,
The smartest, most powerful AI must be American AI. It's thinking of infrastructure as a core component of national sovereignty.
okay, then you have the EU. Totally different approach.
The EU is taking on the role of the global referee. Their AI Act becomes fully effective in August of this year, 2026. And their entire focus is on safety, transparency, and classifying systems as high risk.
So while the US is stepping on the gas pedal as hard as it can, the EU is busy trying to build better brakes and steering wheels.
That's a great way to put it. And their big bet is that in the long run, trustworthy AI will win out over fast AI.
And what about Asia?
It's more of a mix.
Mhm.
You have South Korea, which has passed its own comprehensive safety laws. But then you have China, which is operating on a purely state-led model. Their focus is heavily on integrating AI into industrial capacity manufacturing, robotics, and of course, social governance.
It really feels like the whole conversation has shifted from code to concrete. A few years ago, we were all talking about algorithms. Now we're talking about power plants, fabrication facilities, copper wire.
That's the steel part of the equation. You can't have the silicon without the steel and the energy to power it. The research brings up this concept from economics called the Red Queen effect.
Like from Alice in Wonderland.
Exactly. The Red Queen tells Alice, now here, you see, it takes all the running you can do to keep in the same place.
So how does that apply in economic terms?
It means that companies, and now entire nations, have to invest billions and billions of dollars every year just to stay competitive. If you stop investing for even 6 months, you fall hopelessly behind.
Because the technology is just moving that fast.
Right. Innovation itself is creating what economists call endogenous depreciation.
Which is a fancy way of saying.
It's a fancy way of saying your brand new billion-dollar data center or your cutting-edge AI model becomes obsolete faster than ever before. You build GPT-5, and 6 months later, it's old news. So you have to spend another billion on GPT-6.
It's a treadmill that's spinning faster and faster and faster.
And it creates a massive barrier to entry. Only the biggest players, the biggest companies, and the biggest nations can afford to stay on that treadmill. And that naturally pushes us toward oligopolies.
So all of this was the backdrop for Davos 2026. The official theme was a spirit of dialogue. But when you read the reports from our team, was there any actual dialogue happening?
Well, there was a lot of talk.
Yeah.
But the research suggests a massive disconnect. You have the global consensus crowd, the old guard, trying desperately to hold on to a unified world order. But the reality on the ground is that the world is already balkanized.
One detail from the Davos reports I found really fascinating was the rise of what they're calling middle powers.
This is the geopolitical subplot of the decade. Because the superpowers, the US and China, are so locked in this high-stakes tech war.
It creates an opening for everyone else.
Exactly. Countries like Saudi Arabia, Brazil, Indonesia, India, they are finding their voice. They're realizing their own leverage.
They're the swing voters in the global election.
They really are.
Yeah.
And they're leveraging their resources, whether it's energy, critical minerals, or just access to their markets and data to get the best possible deal for themselves. They're telling both sides, if you want our lithium or our solar power or access to our billion consumers, you have to transfer technology to us. You have to build a factory here. They're playing both sides against the middle.
So we have a fractured world, a frantic race for resources, and a workforce that's being completely reshaped. Let's talk about the money. Section 4, the economics of abundance versus inequality.
This is where the rubber really meets the road for the average person listening.
We have to start with this concept of the structural Jevons paradox. I love a good paradox. Break this one down for us.
Okay, so the Jevons paradox is actually an old economic observation. It dates back to the coal era in the 1800s. And it says that as technology increases the efficiency with which a resource is used.
You'd think we'd use less of it.
You would think so. But what actually happens is that the total consumption of that resource increases. It doesn't decrease.
So if cars get better gas mileage, we don't end up using less gas overall. We just decide to drive more or buy bigger cars.
Exactly. Now apply that same logic to intelligence itself. As AI makes intelligence cheaper, as the cost of what's called inference drops to near zero, we won't use less of it. We will use exponentially more of it.
We'll embed intelligence into everything. Your toaster, your shoes, your calendar.
Everything. And this is what drives that demand for compute and energy through the roof. That's why we have that Red Queen race for infrastructure. But here is the critical economic implication. Digital goods, things made of code and thought, are becoming effectively free. They are deflationary.
But physical goods, housing, food, energy.
They're getting more expensive. Or at the very least, they feel more expensive relative to the wages of many people. This is what the research calls the abundance paradox.
We have infinite digital abundance. You can generate a movie, a song, a book for pennies, but we still live in a world of very real physical scarcity.
And that scarcity is not being distributed equally, not even close. The wealth concentration numbers are. They're stark.
What's the latest data?
The top 1% of U.S. households now own 31.7% of all wealth in the country. That is a 36-year high.
31.7%. That is almost a third of everything.
And it's being driven by this K-shaped economy that we've talked about before on Tomorrow Unveiled. If you own asset stocks in AI companies, real estate capital, your line on the K goes straight up. It's skyrocketing.
Because you own the robots, so to speak.
Essentially, yes. But if your income relies on your wages, especially if you're in that hollow middle, your line on the K is going flat or even down.
This level of inequality is forcing some real policy experiments, though. It's moving from academic theory into actual practice. The research highlights what's happening in Cook County, Illinois.
This is a really significant signal. Cook County has established permanent funding for a guaranteed income program.
Permanent. So this isn't just another pilot program.
That's the huge shift. For years, we've had endless pilots. Let's try UBI for 500 people for 1 year and see what happens. Now governments are starting to realize this might need to be a permanent feature of the social safety net.
Because the agentic era is displacing jobs in a way that the market, left to its own devices, won't fix quickly enough.
Exactly. If the AI agents are creating all this wealth, but they aren't earning wages that then get spent at the local grocery store or car dealership, you break the fundamental cycle of capitalism. You have to find a new mechanism to redistribute those gains.
And that's leading to this idea of an economic dignity compact.
This is a concept that's gaining a lot of traction in policy circles. And it argues that we need to actively redistribute the gains from AI to fund what they call double dignity jobs.
Double dignity? What's that?
They're jobs that provide dignity to both the worker doing the job and the person receiving the service.
So things like caregiving for the elderly, teaching, environmental restoration.
Exactly. Jobs that require that uniquely human touch we talked about earlier. Jobs that AI cannot easily do, or that we wouldn't want it to do.
So you tax the robots to pay the nurses and the teachers a better wage.
That's the basic idea, yes. It's a recognition that if the market undervalues care work because it's not efficient, then policy needs to step in and properly value it because it is essential.
It really feels like we are rewriting the social contract in real time.
We are. We don't really have a choice.
Okay, so we've covered the macro view, the world, the economy, the politics. Let's bring it all the way down to the micro. To the listener who's driving to work or washing the dishes right now, Section 5, Strategies for the Future-Proofed Individual.
How do you survive and hopefully thrive in all this?
The research from Deloitte breaks this down into 5 archetypes of workers who are well-positioned for this new era, the nomad economy archetypes. I found these really helpful to just visualize where someone might fit in.
Yeah, they're a great framework. Let's run through them. First up, you have the nurturers.
So these are the people in care, education, culture, the human-to-human jobs.
Right. Human connection is the premium skill here. As the world gets more digital and automated, we crave authentic human experiences more than ever. If you are good at empathy, connecting with people, teaching, that is a moat that AI has a very hard time crossing.
Okay, then you have the operators.
These are the stewards of the machine, the people who keep the lights on. They audit the AI, they manage the physical infrastructure of the data centers. They're the ones who ensure the silicon and steel actually works as intended.
Next up are the makers.
And this is a really interesting category. It's about using AI tools to build new things, both physical and digital. Think 3D printing or using coding assistants. It's like a new collar artisan.
So you might not know how to code an entire application from scratch in C++i, but with an AI agent as your partner, you can architect and build something incredibly complex.
Exactly. You're the architect, the AI is the tireless builder.
Then we have the adventurers.
These are the entrepreneurs. The barriers to entry for starting a business have just collapsed. You can launch a global company with little more than a good idea and a powerful AI agent. The adventurers are the ones leveraging that low friction to try new things and explore new markets.
And finally, the directors.
Governance, policy, regulation. These are the people who help companies and countries navigate that complex splinter net we talked about, figuring out how to operate in a world with 3 completely different AI regulatory zones. That is an incredibly high-value skill right now.
So nurturer, operator, maker, adventurer, or director, which one are you?
I think I'm a mix of nurturer and director. I love explaining complex systems, which is the director side, but I hope what we do here has a nurturing component. What about you?
I'd like to think I'm an adventurer, but honestly, I probably fall into the nurturer camp with Tomorrow Unveiled as well. But regardless of your archetype, there is one single imperative that cuts across all of them.
Reskilling.
Constant reskilling.
The whole concept of a skill for life is completely dead. My grandfather learned a trade, and he did that same trade for 40 years and then retired. That world is gone forever. The new reality is agility over stability.
The research highlights a case of Wipro, the big tech services company, training 230,000 of their own employees.
Just think about that scale for a second. 230,000 people, that's the size of a medium city. And they're not just sending them a PDF on how to use ChatGPT, they are fundamentally retraining their entire workforce to work alongside these new agentic systems.
And the practical advice here is so crucial. The takeaway is not just learn how to write a good prompt.
No, prompt engineering was a 2024 skill. The 2026 skill is auditing.
Explain the difference.
Prompting is about trying to get the machine to generate something for you. Auditing is about verifying that what it generated is accurate, unbiased, and useful. The human role is shifting away from being the creator and toward being the editor or the verifier.
So critical thinking becomes the ultimate soft skill.
It's the ultimate hard skill now.
Yeah.
You have to be able to look at the output of an AI agent and ask the tough questions. Is this true? Is this biased? Is this safe? Does this actually align with our company's strategy? If you can't answer those questions, you're a liability. If you can, you are invaluable.
So don't just trust the GPS. You still have to look out the window.
Always, always look out the window.
As we start to wrap up this look at 2026, let's bring it all back to that opening concept we started with, the J-curve.
We are in the mess right now. We're in the dip. It feels chaotic and uncertain because we are investing so heavily, financially, emotionally, societally, but we haven't fully realized the gains on the other side yet.
The research concludes that the future-proofed entity, whether that's a nation, a company, or you, the listener, is one that balances three key things.
The first is agility, that ability to constantly reskill and pivot. The second is sovereignty, owning your own infrastructure, whether that's a nation owning its power grid or you owning your personal data and professional reputation. And the third is humanity, placing a high value on the things that machines cannot do.
Agility, sovereignty, and humanity.
That's the triad.
I want to leave you with one final provocative thought that our research team surfaced. We've talked a lot about this agentic workplace. What happens if AI becomes your main coworker? If you spend most of your day auditing an agent rather than brainstorming with a human colleague, what does that do to us socially?
The biggest risk here might not be unemployment. It could be isolation. The future is going to be abundant, yes. We'll have more intelligence, more goods, more capabilities than ever before. But is it lonely?
The future is abundant, but is it lonely? That, the researchers conclude, is the great design challenge for 2026.
We have to actively design for human connection, not just for efficiency.
On that note, thank you for joining us for Tomorrow Unveiled. If you're listening on a podcast service like Apple Podcasts or Spotify, we'd be incredibly grateful if you could leave us a rating and review for Tomorrow Unveiled. It truly helps us reach new listeners.
And it helps us keep the lights on in our own little data center.
It certainly does. Until next time, keep looking forward.
Take care.